This kid just had the opportunity to do something bad last week. He's 16, he's got elbow pain for a couple of months, and he's got motion, that's good, but he's got a tender epicondyle, and his MRI scan, he's got to get an MRI. His MRI scan shows apophysitis. So he's got a growth plate, and the growth plate over here, and he's got all this edema around in the growth plate. He's got apophysitis. The treatment is stop throwing. So we're going to arrest the kid, and he's going to heal his apophysitis. And sometimes I say in the office, this always heals. I say it to parents. That's the good news. The bad news is you got to stop throwing. He didn't stop throwing. He starts feeling better, and then he pitches in a game. He doesn't go through throwing progression. He doesn't get strong. He pitches in a game, and then he feels a pop, and now he's got limited range of motion. This is from last week. And now he's got this x-ray. So he popped his medial epicondyle on the growth plate, and we got the trick for that. You put it back, and it's an open incision we spoke about a little bit earlier. And I agree with Tony. There's no role for percutaneously putting this back. I mean, you can't even get it back. The muscle is pulling it down. You got to pull it back, and it's always anterior because of the muscle force on it. You put it back posterior, you put the screw on, there's a washer here. And so I feel like we're talking about Tommy John surgery all the time because we got this epidemic. We got an epidemic of this problem. Here's another kid seen the same day as we indicated the other kid for surgery. He was coming back in. You know why he's smiling? Told him he could throw. The thing got healed. So he's in follow-up, and then this is from, today is Friday. This is from Wednesday. So these things are happening all the time. This is from Wednesday. Put the screw in. Don't even have a real x-ray. This is a fluoroscopic picture. So we're not just seeing Tommy John injuries. We're seeing the other injuries related to it, probably why we're seeing terrible x-rays. Millions of kids play, and what's amazing to me is every year more and more kids play sports. It's not like it's decreasing, it's increasing. And this is what it was like when I was playing sports growing up. You played in the backyard or in the street. This is a great movie. This guy's character is Maury Wills. And if you guys don't know Maury Wills, he had like a ridiculous leading number of bases stolen. I had a chance to play golf with him one time, and so we were chatting, and I said to him, hey, you know, this thing about stealing bases, how often did you try when you were on base? When you got the first base, how often would you try to steal? And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, every time. Okay, this is what it's like today. If you throw, and this is actually an old article from New York Times now, if you're in the Little League World Series and you're 12 years old, you may have braces on your teeth, that pitcher did, and you may throw in a crowd as big as 30,000 people. And this is what Danny, I think, was saying about pitches. Pitches get a bad name, you know, like the two-seam's a bad pitch. It's actually that if you have repertoire and you have pitches and you have a curveball and you're trying to perfect it or you're good, then you get overused. Why does this kid at age 12 have like 5 different fastballs that he can throw? There's something about the sensationalism of getting all of these pitches. So the kid wins in 10 days. He pitched in 4 games and threw 288 pitches. Seems like a lot. I don't even know if it's a lot until you compare it to the guy who has the biggest workload at the time in all of baseball, CC Sabathia. He only threw 214 pitches. The 300-pounder only threw 214 pitches in 2 games. This is Tommy John, and he said this when we were on a panel. He thinks it's child abuse now. He used the word child abuse when talking about it. We live in an environment, especially in New York, where winning matters. Winning is the most important thing in my life after breathing. Breathing first, winning next, and that is the Yankee way. So we start to specialize early. This is Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote this book called Outliers, and he popularized this notion of 10,000 hours. Everybody's heard of 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours came from a study of musicians. It wasn't even Malcolm Gladwell who studied. It was a guy named Anders Ericsson. He took musicians and he said, we got good ones and we got bad ones. What are the differences with their training? The good ones took 10,000 hours. They also slept more, they took naps, they trained in better parts of the day, and the ones that were worse, they did not practice as much. So they came to this 10,000 hour thing for musicians, and now if you want to get good at anything, all it takes is 10,000 hours. I think it has to do more than that. What the kids want is competitive edge. If the other kid's good, they got to be better. Now everybody's got to get better, and you get into this rapid process of competition. So sports specialization is exactly what it sounds. We don't even have to have a definition for it, but you play intensely all year round. I like specialization. I also like professionalization because they get overly professional. And when you get specialized or professional, you have these problems. I talked to you about the medial epicondyle. This is the data. You've seen it a few times. But in fact, if you have to ask who's the kid who's getting operated on Fridays, they're either 17 or 18. That's most common. Those are the ones that are getting operated on for their Tommy Johns. That's the number one that's growing the most. And we talked about overuse. Now we're going to talk about conception. Really, it's misconception. There's some sense of a reckless abuse of their elbow because they feel like once it pops, I get it over with, and then I get the surgery, and the surgery is a passage of getting better, and I might as well get it done now. I might as well throw while it hurts until the thing pops so I can get the surgery. This is that kid that I showed yesterday, 90 miles an hour. And parents do come in and say, my kid's ready for the surgery. Where does it hurt? It doesn't hurt yet, but he's ready. Why? Because he's getting passed by other pitchers, and he wants to be on a team that he's not on. We did a simple thing. We asked some kids, hey, do you think you should have surgery if your throwing velocity is not where you want it to be, or your control isn't there? 50% of kids would say, I'm in. I want the surgery. And parents and coaches did not believe that overuse were related on a certain percentage of the time, more than 25% of the time. So that gives us an opportunity for education. When this article came out, it got picked up by the media. The next student steroid, Tommy John surgery for performance enhancement. I told you about this kid. He does not have the solvable problem, can't simply fix it. And that's the issue that we're dealing with. All right, he's one of our guys. He's a minor league player, prospect, became a major league guy. And he had ossification, and we did his ligament with the gracilis. And he had new ink. Look at the shirt he's wearing. He likes the new ink. Look at the shirt he's wearing in spring training. Anyway, hey, nice tattoo. And then you look at it. Look what he puts on his tattoo. I'll tell you, he's not the only one. We got other guys in the organization right now, and some of them say 101, some of them say 102, so it doesn't even stop at 100. This guy who threw 98, 99, actually, after his surgery. So kids, in fact, in the holding area, when we're signing, you got to sign your elbow, they're already talking to me about the tattoo they're going to get after the surgery, before the incision even got cut. This isn't black marker. This is a real tattoo. This one's different. Not the one you typically see. It's like an emoji. If you Google New York Times, not Google, if you search New York Times, Tommy John surgery, you get a bunch of hits, 2,000. And if you Google, or not Google, search New York Times for ACL reconstruction, where there's so many more ACL reconstructions being done, you don't get the same number of hits. It's in the media, it's everywhere. All right, here's the Google search. ACL reconstruction, it only takes 0.35 seconds. This is what you get when you Google Tommy John surgery. It's 3 or 4 times as many hits. There's something so sensational about this operation that it's in the media all the time. Can you play the audio on this? Actually, don't play it. I don't want it to break. My son sent me this last week. Do you know that The Simpsons is the longest running sitcom in the history of TV? This show right here? It's unbelievable. So now my kid watches it, and because of the way the TV works, you can watch any episode you want. So he sent me the picture of it, and I say, hey, get me the video of this thing. So Homer, after it's been going on for 18 years, after 18 years of writing on the blackboard after school, he's ready for his Tommy John. Actually, that's not Homer, that's Bart. Okay, there's a selective portrayal of MLB players successfully returning from UCL reconstruction. We don't hear about the guys who didn't come back. This guy hit 102. He had a revision done. And there's something that's celebrated about that. And when we asked MLB media, the guys who cover it, the guys who are immersed in it, almost half of them didn't even understand the injury that's necessary for it, and many believe that it was an indication for performance, and some of them felt it was for pitching speed. And because the kids are influenced by what happens in the media, This is what we have to deal with. I actually wanted to do a study and have a clicker on how many times they said Tommy John surgery during a baseball game. And you can't get past the third inning without it being said a number of times. Tommy John, he's back from Tommy John. Okay, something about the rehab is not appreciated. Everybody wants the surgery and they want that tattoo and they're designing it already. But the rehab is hard and emotionally it's hard. This is one of my guys who was fortunate enough to have Kevin do his rehab. Kids don't understand how hard this is. This is ridiculously hard. And it's not just once. They got to do this throughout the rehab process. And you saw it from AJ and Joe. This part of the rehab is challenging. And of course, you can work on it in so many ways, and you should probably do it for the rest of your life to keep your shoulder healthy, as we just spoke about. Okay, what about arm pain? So we feel like the kids are throwing. We're not into pain. Maybe we are. Arm pain in youth baseball players is common. 75% say they have pain when they're throwing if you ask them when they're not on the field, and/or pain after throwing, and it makes it less fun because it hurts. But our attitude is to be strong. And so 50% of them are encouraged to play through pain. That is what the kids are telling us. Whether they're encouraged or not, somehow that's what they'll tell us if we ask them without their parents or coaches around. What drives specialization? They want to go to college and have a scholarship, and they want to play professional. That's what it is. There is a dream. We don't want to limit the dream, but that's part of the reason. When we looked at kids in our environment, the mean age of specialization is not 15 or 30, it's 8. It's 8 years old. And many of them want to quit because specialization usually comes with a competition that is, at a very young age, is taxing and burdensome emotionally, and they feel like quitting. And of course, there's the injuries. So they want to play collegiately and professionally, and many of them want to play more than one sport, but they're told by coaches not to. You want to play on my team? Give up the basketball. So what about the parents? What are they like? 25% would hire personal trainers for their kids. That's not unusual at all. In fact, the personal trainers come in with the parents when their elbow hurts. So we get to meet them in the office. And then many of them, can you believe that? They would redshirt a kid, medical hardship. They would want to have medical hardship if it gave them an edge and getting further in their sport. So almost 40% of players who had professional coaches got hurt, but if you didn't have professional coaching, then your chances of getting injured much less. I would qualify that. I don't know the nature of their professional coaching, because if you have a really great coach, a Danny Burrell or something, maybe that's not going to happen. But that's what we were discovering from this. So there's dangers to this. Early specialization increases the chance of injury. I think that's clear. Specialization creates worse overall athletes. Maybe we'll delve into that a little bit more. It makes kids less likely to participate in sports and adults. I didn't go over the research, but that's the truth. And some of the studies we have, it creates a false barrier to participation. I can say that's true of my kids. Some of my kids don't want to play certain sports now because they're so far behind the other kids that they don't feel like they want to play with them. They already feel like they're behind. And my kids aren't teenagers yet. And there, of course, is the burnout. So here it is, a study. There's no clear advantage of specialization before age 11 or 12. And this is a Tishan study submitted to AOSSM. I'm on the grading of AOSSM abstracts. I recused myself on this one. Draft picks either first or second for this 6-year period if they played a single sport versus a multiple sport. The multiple sport athletes in high school, they played more when they were a professional. Isn't that interesting? And then if you're a single sport athlete in high school, you had more injuries when you're a professional athlete. There is a long hangover to this specialization that gets you. All right, the solutions, I got 1 minute, 23 seconds left. That's all I need, because there's not many. I put my email down here because I think this is a shared approach. If people have ideas and we don't have discussion time, feel free to email me. I'm interested in thoughts, as you guys are. And I like this guy. I think we spoke it about already. He's probably one of the most respected Yankees ever. It's about having fun. In fact, I heard him numerous times go up to guys who are having a slump, and he'd grab them and say, hey, have some fun today. research, education, policy, we were talking about pitch counts and things like that. Here's one that I'm interested in, and that's culture. We've gotten a little better with culture for concussions. It used to be if you had a concussion, be tough, get back in the game. Actually, it's not cool anymore. If you have a concussion, kids think it's the right thing to do to get out of the game, and parents and coaches think it's the right thing to do. We were able to create culture around that. The best way to manage culture is not change it, it's to develop it from an age that's young enough before they have bad culture. So what does that mean for us? Why don't we start the discussion early on? Frank Alexander's here. He helped my son help write this book. It's available at Amazon. I hand it out in the office all the time. It's a kid's book, and it talks about the dangers of radar guns and playing with pain and things like that. He's a pretty good illustrator, my kid. He did that. You know what you do? You take a real photo, and you just get some software, and you convert it to a cartoon. That's how he did it. And then some people really got onto this idea. This actually is right outside, in Times Square. They threw it on the Jumbotron. And then this is an example of my kid. He actually posed for this. He wasn't reading it on his own, and I grabbed the camera. I grabbed the camera first and gave him the book. But he looks like he's reading it. It's a warm summer evening, and the stadium is packed. The team is 1 out away from winning, and the crowd is calling for a strike. But suddenly the pitcher is holding his elbow. All right, that's all you get. That video is on YouTube. Kids don't always want to read books, but they love YouTubes and they love these small things. So this is all designed to start the conversation early so that kids don't say it's not cool to be throwing with elbow pain. They learn ahead of time. Okay, terrific. Thanks so much. We're going to keep moving.